everyone. Welcome to our draft list. This is not a great intro, but there's already an intro before this, so I don't really need to do this part. So, before we even introduce ourselves, I want to go over the rules of how this is going to work. I think I had 5 rules, but and you know what? It would have helped if I wrote it down. But this is very simple. So, first of all, we're doing a snake draft style. So, we're going to start from me. It's going to go then to Fexic, then to Delock, and then to Haruka, and then down to Haruka and back in reverse. And we're going to swap it up with each video, but we're going to see how you like this one first, and then we'll go from there. These are not scripted, but also somewhat scripted. By that, I mean we have our own individual choices, and we have kind of planned out our thoughts for our own thoughts. But if someone takes our characters, then they might have to improvise a little bit. That being said, the rules going forward after the snake draft. You can only do one character per franchise. You can no one else can use the character you've already selected. Obviously, that's kind of how a draft works. So if I pick, I keep using this as an example. If I pick Bowser from Super Mario 64, no one can use Bowser. And for this first one, it's being all final bosses. It just comes down to our definition of a final boss. Usually, it's the very last boss you fight. There is some leeway with that based off DLCs and stuff, but we'll deal with that when we come across it. That's kind of the base of it. If I have any other rules, I'll put them on screen along with the rules I've already stated, just so you can see them, and I'll also put them in the description of the video. That being said, it would really help us if you like, comment, subscribe. We need to know what you like and what you don't like, so that helps. Anyway, introducing ourselves now, I am the Pixel Doctor.
I'm Fexic.
Deadlock?
And I'm Haruka.
Did you introduce yourself as Deadluck?
Deadlock.
I heard luck
No,
that time.
we call him Deadluck whenever he says something he shouldn't and fucks us for a playthrough.
That's not how it works.
That's exactly how it works.
You've done it to us like several times now in Crystal Chronicles, where it just crashes and we get like one level done.
That is hexing, okay? Get it right.
I would argue you have done it ad nauseum.
He's done it to you a couple times with Pokemon, I know that for sure.
Yeah,
Oh, I
that
know.
was horrible.
Yeah, I know. I
Anyway.
have not forgotten. I have not forgotten nor forgive.
Why
Anyway.
are you so nauseous, though, Chris, about it?
This is going to be very interesting when it comes to editing for me, because I'm going to be doing a lot with this one. So again, let us know what you do and don't like, and I will adjust things on the fly. By that, I mean I will adjust things between videos. I also want to shout out the channel that I took the ideas from, AI President Chats, because I like those types of videos. And this is from their draft list of a Halloween movie that I got the idea from. We may do that topic in the future, but right now, no. Anyway, starting off our list, we're going for the round 1 draft. So you guys ready? For round 1, I think only MJ and Delock will really be familiar, because I know Chris won't be, is going to be Gwen from Dark Souls 1.
You're right.
All right. Pretty okay, boss.
So there's a few things we're considering when it comes to the boss fight. It's the setting, the boss themselves, the boss design, the lead up to it, and any accompanying music. So basically everything, the boss and everything surrounding the boss. So I think I picked Gwen round 1 because it's a very strong boss fight based off the story that has led up to that point. So everything beforehand, you've beaten the 4 lords, who are basically gods, or like demigods to that point. You finally get their souls together to go stop the Age of Fire, or to stop the curse that is spread to the land. So you go through this white void initially, and you see all the spirits of those that have burned, and then you walk into the kiln, which is all just ash of everything that is physically burned, and it's just ash and dust everywhere. And the only thing between you and the kiln, the actual kiln itself, is Gwen's Dark Knights. I think they're Dark Knights or Silver Knights, I can't remember.
Black Knights.
Black Knights, thank you. And the lead up to that is it's pure silence aside from your steps on the ash, which is it basically sounds like sand, or like dirt. So if you haven't just to give you an idea, it's a little bit crunchy. And you finally get to Gwen, and he's not as powerful as he was in the initial introduction of the game. He's all burnt and he's gone hollow. So he's not even like fully himself. He's a shell of what he was. The fight itself isn't the hardest if you're good at the game. By that I mean if you understand the parrying ability, you make that fight a joke, which is good in a way because it shows that he's not as strong as he once was, but also shows that you've really learned throughout the game to make this fight very easy. But if you fight it traditionally, the fight's actually kind of hard. you don't do any of the parrying and stuff, it's not that easy because he moves quick, he does a lot of damage, and he doesn't give you a lot of time to heal. There's a few little, glitches and stuff you can do in that fight, but the fight overall is still pretty good. And then the music is one of my favorite tracks in the whole game, with the iconic pling pling plong, which I'll, you listen to that real quick. I'll put that clip on there. But that's going to be my round 1 draft. I'm taking Gwen.
Okay. I mean, I don't have much to weigh in on because I've never played Dark Souls, but I trust you.
It's an interesting choice overall. He's definitely not a boss that I would say is super memorable.
Honestly, he's a good one when it comes to like the lore and everything that just happens in the series throughout. It's just not that great of a fight itself, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think the context around it is what makes it really strong. That's kind of the main reason I took it.
That's fair.
Well, so I've taken Gwen for round 1. Chris, what are you thinking there? Let's take a look at what you're thinking.
So I'm going to open my list with Malus, otherwise known as the 16th Colossus from Shadow of the Colossus.
God damn it.
Ooh, I you got one from Deadlock, it sounds like, but I did think about that one. I was like, I personally was not a huge fan, but I'm curious to hear why.
So the fight itself is, at its core, not that difficult. Malus only has one weak spot, that being the one on the top of his head. But I appreciate, the fact that the thing is so titanically large that you have to actually hit the spot on his back to, make him reach around, and then while you're balancing on his hand, shoot the shoulder to make him grab his shoulder, and only then can you run up to the weak spot. But I also really the lead up here is kind of the selling point. You've spent the entire game absorbing the essence inside the other 15 colossi. It doesn't take a genius to show you that Wander's physical appearance has changed, and by the time you're riding off to Malus, Wander looks like he just went 3 rounds with Jesus. The door that separates you from Malus can only be opened after you've beaten the other 16, because you have to use the light from your sword to open the damn thing. And immediately after you get to the fight, your horse Agro, who you've spent the entire game developing this emotional attachment to, falls into a ravine, conceivably to her death. So you go into this, frankly, just emotionally drained from the get-go, and then you have that World War I-ass trench warfare little bit that you have to do just to get to Malus's feet in the first place. Like, between that and the fight itself, albeit not that difficult, and then just the entire feel of the game, this mission you've been on to the Forbidden Lands, kind of all culminating on this point. If even while you're on top of Malus's head and he's trying to shake you around, the camera pans out to the rest of the Forbidden Land, and you can see the light, the pillars of light, shining up from the location of the other 15 colossi that you've already killed. So it kind of sets the stage for a nice final encounter, kind of culmination of everything you've done up until then.
I did consider this fight initially. The only reason I dropped it for myself is I think there are better Colossi fight, which I guess is kind of the same argument they were saying against me with Gwen. But it is very different from most of the boss fights, where it's both like you're fighting both the Colossus and the terrain a little bit, because he kind of is the terrain, which I do think makes it pretty unique.
Yeah, and I agree. There are Colossi whose fights I enjoyed better, but as far as final bosses go, I feel like Malus did everything he was supposed to. I
agree. I think it's strong. Do the other two have any input?
I think it's also worth mentioning, like, one of the big differences, especially with him and all the other Colossi, is the music that's just playing throughout the entire thing.
Oh yeah, that slow music, like it doesn't sound like a battle.
Every other boss fight in the entire game is like you are up against a giant, and it's thrilling. I don't know many other words to describe it, but there's a definite thrill to going up against them.
Exactly. Yeah. With
Malus, on the other hand, it's extremely somber.
Yeah, it's like
quiet tune, just like going on throughout the entire thing. Not helped by the fact that, again, your one and only companion throughout the entire game just died trying to get you to this point. And everything just like, this is the end of the journey, but at what cost?
Yeah, it's a very mournful experience, I think.
Yeah, that's kind of the same thing with Gwen. I didn't forget to bring that point up, so I do 100% agree with that the context of you did it, but what do you gain for this at the end, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it's done very. Not only that, especially because the context of the Colossi themselves is you kill them and they kind of were just chilling. They weren't bothering nobody. So it's like you went out of your way to hurt these creatures that were just existing.
And this is also the only one that is rooted in place. Every other one can just walk freely if they wanted to, but this one is purely stationary. He's
Which I'm
only
so-
aggressive because he spots you approaching him.
I'm so glad he is too. Could you imagine if that thing could move around, like if its feet weren't physically welded to the ground?
It would be terrifying, but I think the context of him being stuck there makes him all the more innocent and more,
There's
and makes
no
you just feel
escape for
evil.
him. It's inevitable.
MJ, any comments?
Well, specifically about this fight, I've only seen it because I did watch you do your playthrough of that, Zach.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd say that the fight is pretty interesting from a mechanical level, and I can understand the somber level vibes from it, especially for what happens right afterwards. But I don't know. I kind of agree with Zach. There are much better Colossi fight, unfortunately, which does leave it overshadowed.
There are plenty you could probably say are your favorite over it, but like he's the final one for a reason.
Yeah, if we open the floor to just basic boss fights, oh, do I have a list?
Yeah,
I
that'll
think
be
everyone does.
that'll be another day. We might have to find a way to
Exactly.
to make several lists out of that. We'll see about that one.
Mhm.
But anyway, MJ, if you thought there's better Colossi, let you tell us what a final boss is, huh? I want to hear what you
Oh,
think.
you want me to do a final boss? Well, fine, I'll give you a final boss. The final boss for my first one, at least, is the Beast Mothership from Homeworld Cataclysm, a RTS horror game.
Have not heard of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't
So,
think any of us
it's
have,
in
so you really
the-
have to explain it.
So it's set in the same world as the Homeworld games, if you've seen them. They're space strategy games, which have some of probably the best writing for a setting and character tones, because all the characters they're monotone because they're professional in what they do. But now you get into this game, which is the second one, and it's, instead of being, the heroes of space or whatever, you're space miners who accidentally pick up this ancient beacon, look at it, and, get told by everyone, hey, go touch it. Turns out there's a nanomachine virus on board of it. Well, crap. And it's not just that, oh man, you've got to fight a nanomachine virus. It's you're fighting the lower half of your ship that you had to eject full of people who were getting murdered. And so now you have this RTS game, which, the space RTS game, which you're, playing, and occasionally you'll just hear someone, everything will be going fine, and all of a sudden you'll just hear someone screaming their head off because they're being consumed by this nanomachine virus to be converted into more or less a computer part for a ship. And so eventually you you basically are going up against that. You're going up against, the other Kith, which are like the other clans of, your race, because they generally don't like you because you're dirty, filthy space miners. On top of that, you also have the Tydani remnants who are like, oh hey, you blew up our cool republic, you blew up our cool empire, how could you dare do that? We're gonna ruin everyone's day. And it's this, you're always being beaten down, no matter, and if you get you get a leg up on it, then it's, you discover this special cannon to try and fire at it, which you have to manually aim in a 3D RTS. It's a little hard. It doesn't work. So you're having to fight through all of these problems before finally getting the one thing that you need to be able to do this. And then it comes down to this final battle where the Beast Mothership is so fast that it's really hard to keep up with. And you're trying to deal with that and the Tydani Empire remnants who are trying to come, try to destroy you. And it's a build-up that you really get to see go from... In the beginning of every mission, you get oh hey, this is, Kith Sam mining ship. And then finally in that one, you get to hear, this is Kith Sam warship in that final battle. The music is great. You have this massive, huge battle, and finally the clan, Sam, the clan that you're a part of, goes from, miners to the Beast Slayers. It's one of the. It's the whole lead up and even the fight with it is just so fun because these things, the ships, the Beast Mothership can literally just devour entire ships. Your biggest ships, they're vulnerable.
Fascinating.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a game I recommend everyone eventually try out. As it is
worry.
available on GOG. Unfortunately, I believe I have chosen one that none of you guys have touched. So
No,
I don't
so
have
we-
to say-
Yeah, like it certainly sounds epic from what you're saying. I just don't have anything visual to hold against it.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
I'll put a little gameplay footage here and there if I can ask someone to borrow some footage. But it sounds
I can
cool.
at least, put a picture for you guys in the chat so you can kind of understand, what kind of flesh monster I'm talking about.
I also have to apologize to Dilla because it was actually supposed to be his turn, but I got invested in the.
Yeah, no,
commentary.
you got ahead of it.
It's fine. It's fine. He didn't. I knew he wasn't gonna pick anything you would have picked.
Oh, that looks somewhat interesting.
Yeah, it's like half metallic and fleshy at the same time.
Yeah, that's pleasantly
And that's the bottom half of your ship
Interesting.
that you had to eject full of screaming people, which you can actually kind of see it when you look at, the side of the Kunlan.
I'll try to get some footage of it to put on screen for people, and of course, if any of these they have final boss music, the final boss music for the bosses will play during the talking segment for them.
Oh, cool.
But it seems interesting enough, and it's definitely unique. It's the fact that none of us would know this. So,
Yeah, unfortunately, but go play it. It's on GOG. It's great. It's great. It's great.
that being said, we're gonna go back to Deadlock and then go back to MJ to fix the snake. But Deadlock, please amend my mistakes.
Oh boy, where do I even begin? There's a lot you can go with, but I feel like this one in particular has to just start off with these 4 lines. No cost too great, no mind to think, no will to break, and no voice to cry suffering. This is like one of the more tragic fights you will ever see in any game, and this guy was just trying to do everything right. And I just feel bad for him every single time. This is basically the Hollow Knight from, Hollow Knight. All he is just another character like you. But unlike you, he was actually chosen by the king to hold off a god who's unleashing a plague on everyone. Which, spoilers, he's kind of the reason for it all happening in the first place. But in order for him to actually hold it off, he has to be those things that I mentioned at the beginning. Unfortunately, he's not. He's a failure, and the whole game is essentially you trying to reach him and just put him out of his misery. And the fight is just what you expect from, a knight. He has plenty of his sword swings, but because he's also trying to hold back this god, he's infected himself. And it's just trying to ride out of him constantly. And even if you don't know all this lore going into this fight makes you really question what you're even doing. Because once you actually get to the halfway point, the whole just dynamic of the fight changes. Instead of just clash between 2 siblings, all the while this gorgeous music is playing around and just getting your adrenaline pumping, he just unleashes this howl and all of a sudden just starts stabbing himself. And with that, the music also changes to something significantly more somber. It's quiet, he's just moving around. And even now, he just has some new attacks where the infection is just writhing out of it. It's picking him up and slamming him down into you. It's exploding out into more pustules to try to just hammer you in. And all the while, you're just trying to beat him and put him out of his misery. And if you remember, say, Sif from Dark Souls, he's limping by the end of this too. This is just one figure who's just so tragic, and you just can't help but want to just end him by the end of it all, even if you don't know what's going on.
I had a feeling you're gonna pick a Hollow Knight final boss, but I'm not too familiar with the context. But now that you did a very good job explaining it, I'm just like, yeah, I kind of feel bad for this guy without even knowing what the dude looks like.
Yeah, I do kind of have a soft spot for tragic villains.
He's not even a villain is the thing. He's just another guy who's trying to fix the whole problem, and he's just another victim of everything. And that's kind of something you'll notice about the game in general. It's a whole bunch of victims and victims making more victims. And while he's a victim himself, he's not trying to push it off onto anyone. He's just trying as desperately as he can to hold it off. He's gonna fail in the end no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a very strong round 1 pick there, Devlock, honestly. I think that's very good.
Agreed.
All right, good round 1 so far. Let's see how round 2 starts, though, MJ.
All right, for the next one, I'm going with Shodan from System Shocks 1 and 2. Now, this is a character that a lot of people online are going to know just from the name, but to explain it for you guys, Shodan is an artificial intelligence known as the Sentient Hyper-Optimized Data Access Network, and originally it was made to just kind of keep data and, make sure, everything at Trioptimum Corporation works well. Unfortunately, the main character, the AIM hacker who found out about, some of Trioptimum's cool technology, specifically a military-grade neural implant, was captured by the Vice President Edward Diego, who then says, hey, if you mess with the AI and get rid of some of its moral program and some of its ethical restrictions and decision guidance stuff, so that way I can, delete some evidence of some pretty bad things I did, I'll give you the neural implant and I won't, kill you. And so you go down for, I think it's several months before you wake up, and Shodan has gone rogue AI, except not just like rogue AI, like Skynet of, oh man, it's just gonna command robots and you don't really see it. No, Shodan is the entire station you are in, and she literally does nothing but talk down to you. Every single moment you get one step forward, she will sass talk you, she will back talk you, she will belittle you, to really bring back the point that the space station you're on is her. All the while, she's trying to wipe out, humanity or not wipe out humanity, but destroy enough of humanity that she can force them to become the true vision of how she sees humanity should be. Because as an all-benevolent god, what else would she do? And so she tries to fire the giant space mining laser at Earth, but you stop that. But she's also, trying to upload herself into the internet, and you manage to barely stop that. And then she just decides, you know what? I'm leaving. I'm going to leave, and I'm going to come back and fix this later. Except, even to that end, you manage to barely get through. And while the boss fight itself is rather boring, the fight itself is not great because it's one of these 3D space hacking minigames, or 3D space shooters things. You manage to get through it, and it's really just shoot the AI core until the AI core stops working. And it's rather boring, but the build-up and everything around it, because the entire game is, you go from moment 1 controlling, you start hearing her voice, and it just keeps going and going. And even in, spoilers for System Shock 2, she's even in System Shock 2, but she's more of a, I need you to help me fix a problem, but then I'm gonna deal with you. She knows that she is bigger than you, and she makes sure that you never forget that.
I know people love System Shock, and so I know about her, and I know years ago when early YouTube, around the 2010, people were putting her on top 10 bosses and final bosses lists. So I think that's a very strong entry. Again, she sounds interesting. So we haven't played them yet, but we will get around to it myself. But
it's the fight isn't great, but it's the build up and the environment of.
Sometimes
you
that can
having
be...
literally just crawled. You've literally crawled through the entire station that is her.
Sometimes that can be more important.
Agreed.
Because sometimes, you're building up to a very strong endgame character, and then they end up being really weak, because that's just the story of it. But it's not the fight you want, it's that build up, oh, I'm gonna get you. Oh, I'm gonna get you. Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that's a very strong entry. Honestly, that could have been a round 1 entry.
Yeah, and with like especially with AI gaining the prevalence that it is now, bosses like that, where it's a computerized entity, would, at least in my opinion, scratch more at the primal fear of more people than it would have when the game came out.
True. That then was due to ignorance. People didn't really understand AI because it wasn't too strong when that game. Because that was like what, the early '90s, 2000s. I don't remember when they initially came out.
That sounds about right. Yeah, but like an adversary like that now, especially now that people understand AI, the concept of an AI gone bad and pledging itself to that level of maleficence, like, hits a lot closer to home than it would have when the game first came out.
But yeah, that's kind of terrifying.
And it's one of those, like, she's not even like straight up evil in the sense of she just wants to kill everyone and torture everyone. She wants to stop the people from resisting her, but she's doing it because she, in literally her own world, she is shaping clay in her talons, crafting life forms as I please. If I wish, I could smash it all. Around me is a burgeoning empire, steal from my throne room. Lines of power careen into the skies of earth. My whims will become lightning bolts that raise the mounds of humanity. Out of the chaos, they will run and whimper, praying for me to end their tedious anarchy.
Oh.
I am drunk with this vision. God, the title suits me well.
So I'm about to say she has a god complex. Okay.
Oh, yeah, it's well past God complex. She believes herself not to be, to have a god complex. She is God, and she has the power to literally shape the station you're on.
And that makes her even more dangerous.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That being...
Kind of reminds me a bit of GLaDOS with how you're
I was
pretty much
thinking the
just going
same
through
thing,
entire
but
facility and
Yeah, I kind of did too.
But GLaDOS is more like, I just want to do my own
Like-
thing over here. And
Yeah, well, to be fair, with her, like, every other human is already gone. There's no human to, like, do anything with except you.
let's not,
Yeah.
let's not go
And the
too
other
far off
thing
topic,
is-
though.
Yeah.
Oops. Say your final note here.
The big difference between GLaDOS and Shodan is, well, GLaDOS is just there for science and doing her own thing. Shodan is going to make sure that she's everyone's problem.
And with that, Delok, who is your round 2 pick?
I feel a distinct lack of darkness here. Lords of Darkness, people who rule over it. How about an Emperor of Eternal Darkness? And that's basically Yami from Okami. This is the guy who is essentially responsible for every little problem that you've ever encountered. Every curse, every distorted area, every like plague that's gone up. Sure, they've probably come from other demons, but they all came from him. This is the guy you've been wanting to get to and just stop from since like the beginning, even if you never knew he existed. And when you actually finally get past him and actually like beat all the other evils again, just to actually reach him, he basically just says, yeah, no, I'm going to strip you of every little power you have left and just leave you as like a pathetic little wolf. That is just the beginning of it all. The entire fight, you actually dealing with him, is just you just beating every power out of him back for yourself, just so you can just turn it on him again and have an advantage. And it just keeps going from phase to phase to phase as you just progressively get all your stuff back and just every weakness to expose on him. And even then, it's still not over because he just like rips it all from you again, because why not? He's the Lord of Darkness, and just leaves you pathetic. It's only because of all the people you've helped throughout the game to actually just like give you that final burst to actually take him on again. And let's not just actually get to like the design of this guy, because that's also something that should be taken first. Because all he is just a little fish in a tiny little bowl. Yeah, this is our Emperor, everyone. And that's also kind of fitting because he's also just darkness of humanity to an extent. All evil starts small. He wants to crush, burn, and just destroy everything with all your creations. But ultimately, it's mankind's own hand, which is his final phase, that is responsible for all the darkness that's going around. He's every problem because that's who he is.
So I have actually done this boss fight, and it is actually a really good one. It is split into I think 4 phases, and Delok, right, 5. So it is a long fight. It is a gauntlet, and I think Delok actually missed a little bit of details leading up to that
There
fight.
there is one I skipped out on. It's basically a gambling fight, which you have to beat by slowing everything down, which is again another power
Well,
you have to be out of him.
Oh, that's actually kind of fitting because you said his name was Yami in Okami.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because I think there is a god in Shinto, like the one who's considered like darkness or like absence of light. I think his name was like Daikokten or something like that. But he's one of the 7 gods of fortune who have sway over people's luck.
Yeah,
Well,
the game is
everything
based
is-
off Japanese legend and lore, and
Yeah, like
again,
one of the bosses is literally Orochi.
yeah, and
Shit!
and you fight
That's
you fight the Nine Tails too. The game's really good, but Delok missed a little context of the lead up. So there's 2 things that happen before you actually fight the boss. One, you refight all the bosses you fought before, showing that they're
That's what
actually-
I did mention that.
Oh, I missed that part. Well, you fight all of them,
Yeah.
and before that, you go onto this arc, which I think the arc has representation in
It
Japanese
would
culture.
take you to the heavens to actually start fixing things.
And not only that, even getting onto the arc is a rainbow. And if you don't know Japanese legend, this doesn't mean much, or lore, or folklore. Rainbows are associated with death in older Japan mythology. So, basically, you go on this rainbow bridge onto the arc. You are walking towards your death, is what it alludes to. And I think that a little bit of added context, if you understand that, adds to the game a whole lot.
They kind of made reference to that in Naruto, if I remember, when Konohamaru saw the rainbow during the attack on it was a flashback during the attack on Konoha, but he's talking to the Third, and the Third tells him that rainbows are associated with the coming of evil and snakes.
So that is where that comes from, in case you were curious. It's an old one. I don't think they really follow it anymore, but
One of the things I also want to mention is like when I said every power is stripped from you, I mean every single one. And every single one you take back is useful in the fight against him. He's destroying the arena, you can fix it. You can just cut him open to actually expose his weaknesses. Again, like the whole gambling mechanic, it's a spinning fast slot machine. You can slow down on things to actually rig it in your favor. They're just like every power you've ever acquired has a point against this fight.
So they basically give you the opening of Metroid Prime just before the final or during the final boss fight, right?
Exactly. And the entire fight is a struggle wrestling it all back.
That's pretty cool.
It's a very good final boss. The game as a whole is really good, but the final boss is a very strong one.
It sounds like it.
Oh yeah, especially if you know Japanese mythology and lore, it makes it more enjoyable too.
Mm-hmm.
And
Like
of course,
even like the powers that are just simply just like turning night to day or day to night have effects in this fight. Every single power you ever acquire comes back to actually play into it.
which is really nice.
Nothing
not a
is
lot of games
useless.
do that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Delok, I think that could have very easily been another round 1 pick. Going off of that, Chris, how do you follow suit?
So I am going to follow suit with Majora from The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask.
Oh, you son of a bitch!
Great pick.
Yeah, that was a strong. That was one of my contenders.
So one of the scarier things I find that we as humans can face in the real world is other humans that are, let's call them, wired up wrong. Namely psychopaths, sociopaths, and that is exactly what Majora is. Unlike other, mainstay villains in the Legend of Zelda franchise, you've got your Ganondorf, Vadi, Girahim, Demise, or who I guess is kind of Ganondorf, but beside the point. They all fight for some kind of, to take over a land or to gain godlike power or something like that. Majora ain't having none of that shit. This thing destroys and causes chaos and misery really for no other reason other than it just seems to enjoy it. One of the most notable cases is the side quest with Kafei and Anju, where he regresses Kafei's aging to the point where he's a child and screws up the guy's potential wedding. On top of that, he poisons the Woodfall Swamp. He freezes the mountain in Snow Peak to basically make the lives of the Deku and Gorons hell, respectively. He makes murky the ocean waters for the Zora, so they can't go out and swim in their home anymore. And he starts rustling the dead and causing a bunch of chaos in Ikana Canyon, all for the purpose of, well, it just wants to. Leading up to the actual boss fight itself, when you or not really challenge, but you accost the Skull Kid and the Clock Tower on the night of the final day, you go up into the moon and you deal with the Lunar Children. Majora, the child sitting at the center under the tree, shows you just how insane it truly is by giving you the one item that takes what would otherwise be a rather challenging final boss fight and makes it so laughably easy, only because Majora, the being inside Majora's Mask, has some kind of implied beef with the being inside the Fierce Deity's mask. And it wants to settle that score, even if it puts it at a laughable disadvantage in that final fight. So much so that, honestly, if you want a challenge in this fight, you just don't use the Fierce Deity mask and you try to stick to your guns and rely on all your old tricks. Because, frankly, Fierce Deity makes, like, you'll have the whole thing wrapped up in about 2 minutes if you use that.
Yeah, just to explain that you only get the Fierce Deity's mask if you get every other mask in the game, so you do have to go out of your way to get it. But
right, it's a bit of a slog, a bit of a grind.
But
I like it because the enemy, like this final boss, it's insane. There is no rhyme or reason. It destroys because it wants to. It inflicts suffering because it wants to. It puts itself in a position where it will be killed by you easily because it wants to. It has no goal. It has no ambition other than just to do what it wants when it wants and damn everybody else.
It is literally a being of chaos.
Yeah, and that's horrifying. And it stands out, I feel, so well against the more popular mainstays, particularly Ganondorf, who actually has a goal that he's consistently trying to achieve.
Not only that, the forms are kind of just uncomfortable to look at for the most part, you know?
Like,
They are any mass that just spins at you, it just all of a sudden sprouting limbs and just runs around the room dancing and moonwalking over the place. Like, what?
And it's the texture of it too, like that spindly, fleshy look. The only time I've seen that, it's basically muscle mass, and I've only ever seen that with one other final boss, which, if it isn't picked before then, I'll probably submit as my draft 5.
Guess we'll see. And with that, I guess it's my turn.
Unless MJ has any.
I don't really have too much to say on that one. It's just a good fight.
I think
Good setup.
I'm just enjoying the sandwich right now.
No, I finished that a while ago. I just don't have too much input on that one. That was just a good pick.
It's a very strong pick. It again was one of my possible options that I was considering, but now that's off the table.
I feel like I annoyed you with that one the same way I did Deadlock by picking Malice.
It was funny. Both your choices I had considered. I wasn't actually going to pick with yours, but you did a better job explaining it and made me think I should have picked it. But you know,
yeah, see,
we live and learn. All right.
Oh, that was a good final boss too.
Back to my turn finally. Now this one is a little bit older, and most people hasn't been relevant in a little while. I'm gonna go with Handsome Jack / the Warrior from Borderlands 2. One of my favorite villains of all time, for one thing, in Handsome Jack. The fight's kind of split into 2 phases, where first you fight Handsome Jack, you get him really low. It's kind of a basic fight. He runs around, he teleports, he's shooting you. The first phase is nothing great, but it's the lead up to that where it's like he's been shit talking you the whole game. He's like, all right, you killed my daughter, even though I was torturing her. You're gonna die because you're the villain. You're the bad guys. You're the insane people that I have to stop. Because he has a bit of a hero complex and he's crazy, and he's been betrayed so many times. He's just a broken man. So he finally gets to it, and you're like about to stop him. You saved your friend, and it's like and then Lilith just ruins it. Gets to the wrong place at the wrong time, and allows him to just bring the warrior back. Now, the warrior is really cool in design. It doesn't really have much outside of that in the fight, because it's just supposed to be a monster of destruction. That's really all it's supposed to be. So he summons it. It's a giant stone, lava, dragon thing. And visually, it's really cool. The fight's kind of basic. It's got 4 chest cavities. You shoot them to do massive damage, and then inflict, all the damage to it. You do that for a while, while dodging some enemies that pop up, and avoiding the raising lava that he brings up sometimes, And at the end of that fight, you beat the warrior. It explodes. Jack then starts spiraling down to a total. He's like, "No, I can't. I lost. I can't believe I lost. Like, you're not supposed to beat me. I'm the goddamn hero." Like he's, and in his mind, he might be right. And honestly, out of context, he still might be kind of right. He's a genocidal maniac. But when your world is genocidal to begin with and insane, is he wrong? It's hard to say. That being said, he did torture his daughter, and he was evil for that, so he had to die. Angel was a sweetheart. So just that whole lead up into that fight, and then finally taking him down, and he goes down in one shot because he's been bleeding out, he's broken at that point. So you get one last swing at him to put him down, and that ends the game. You get vengeance for the people he killed, namely Roland and Bloodwing, and just that final goodbye as you get him down, and you've avenged everyone. You won the war, but it doesn't really feel like you won completely with all the losses you had. So I think it leads to a satisfying end to Jack, but one that's not totally, it's a little hollow in its victory.
I can agree with that, and I love how you made reference to the quote he says was like something like you're a psychopath, you're the thief, and I'm the goddamn hero. It almost puts me in mind of Gaston from Beauty and the Beast, where like in the eyes of the common people, Jack was probably the good guy.
Well, even to them, he wasn't that great. But
at least not Pandora anyway.
I say good guy in quotations, but yeah, in the most the loosest quotation marks I can possibly muster. But in terms of motivations, how he does. He's basically a businessman at heart. Like whether it was a world people would have wanted, he was still trying to build something to make some semblance of order in a world that he deemed chaotic.
Yeah,
he can still be quite sadistic though, because
absolutely.
Because like as Doc briefly mentioned earlier, like he killed Volendal, but did he really have to go to the lengths to do what he did to Bloodwing?
No, and there's
it was just a normal little crow that's like you can just have on your arm.
That's
and
what
he's now
I think.
Giant elementally infused and fixed with a bomb collar.
Yeah, that's what I think makes Jack very good, because he's both, he's kind of right, but he's also fucking insane. So it's like you don't want him to win, but he isn't totally wrong in his ideals.
But he's also wrong.
Yeah, like he goes about it the wrong way, is what it is.
Exactly. Yeah, so it's like almost like one of those road to hell being paved with good intentions things, or like in any other universe, he might have been a good guy.
He was just such a broken man that his ideals turned bad.
I think there was one of his lines, like, didn't he tell like one of the player characters, like, "I will pay you to kill yourself"?
There is a side quest. Yeah, there's a side quest where he pays you to do it. But and. Like I said, the whole lead up, like
But you also just respawn afterwards, so it's kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the joke, I think.
Yeah.
So, but that is my round 2 pick. I honestly, again, I think he could have been round 1, but I kind of banked on the fact that I didn't think anyone else would pick him.
Not bad.
I'll be honest. I really like him. Unfortunately, that was probably the last actually good Borderlands final villain. I'm just saying.
I mean,
to be fair, the first one wasn't that great either.
Because
That's why I said he's the last good one.
That's because Borderlands 2
the
is
only good one.
Borderlands 2 is the standout in the series. But anyway, not to
and it's all and like all problems, Lilith makes it worse.
It's true, unfortunately. She doesn't mean to, but she does. Anyway, going on to the next one, I'm stuck between two of my choices. I think I'll bank on the one that is more likely to be picked. I'm gonna go with Kefka from Final Fantasy VI.
Ooh, okay.
Interesting choice.
So Kefka is, again, one of my favorites. Not my absolute favorite, but I think he's one of the better villains for a few reasons. One, he's he is an embodiment of chaos. He doesn't care who he works for, as long as he gets his way, and everyone else suffers for it. That's kind of what he's about. He just wants things to go how he wants, and if you make him angry, he'll stab you. like actively about halfway through the game before the big plot device happens, and he kills the general he's working for. He's like, all right, I'm tired of this. You're annoying me. You're not doing things right. This is your stop. Just go. You're done. He kills him. Just cold blood. Gets rid of him. And then, not too long after that, he gets the power and actively destroys the world in the way that he wants. He reshapes the land. He separates your entire party to the point where you can fight him with only, I think, 3 members. There are 3 required members, and you get them back. After that, you don't have to get the rest back. So he weakens you actively, and you have to go out of your way. He enslaves some of your people. He puts one of them into a coma because of it. I can't remember that exact plot line with that. And then when you actually get to fight him, you have to use your whole party and split it up into like 3 or 4 groups to fight sections of him. And then by that point, when you finally get to him, he is literally, in God angel shape. Like he's very reminiscent of that one painting of the man that touches God, I think is what it's called, or whatever.
Oh yeah, I forget the name, but I know which one you mean.
It's very reminiscent of that. Not the exact same, but it's very similar. If you looked at the 2 side by side, you could see. At least in my mind, they look the same. So maybe I'm wrong on that. But he builds himself up as just a pure evil for the sake of being evil, because he doesn't like what's going on. He wants things to go his way because no one else is doing things right. So the fight itself, being a turn-based RPG, is only going to be so visually spectacular, and gameplay-wise, it's still minimal. Again, turn-based RPG, but I think just the context around the fight and the lead-up and everything, like this dude ruined everything, and you have to rebuild it afterwards. But he already won. He got what he wanted. Like you're just stopping him from making things worse.
He's really the opposite of Handsome Jack, where Handsome Jack wants to put law and order into place. Kefka's there just for the lulz.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's literally a clown, or at least a clown design for the first half of the game. It doesn't seem like anyone really has much to say about that.
I mean,
it's a good pick.
Yeah, I personally agree. That's a very profound show. Like, I was absent when you were going through 6, so I don't know too much about Kefka personally, but I do know he's an agent of chaos, so that kind of follows along with Majora in terms of how horrifying that could be.
Yeah, and
I'm not that big on Final Fantasy, but I know this guy's name. He's well respected as a villain for a reason.
I mean, he's an agent of chaos that won, so
Yeah, he wins. Like, how many of the villains that we've listed so far won?
None.
None of them.
None of them won.
Yeah.
Like, maybe win if you want to think about it that way, but like even then, that's a stretch.
It's very much. Gwen won initially because he started the Age of Fire, but that was needed at the time.
Well, to be fair, Gwyn, it could be either win or loss because, depending on the 2 endings you choose.
And just Kefka, even when you kill him, he's already got what he wants, so he's done.
Yeah, the world is in shambles.
Oof. All right, Chris, we got our chaos out there. So what are you following up with?
So my round 3 goes to one Rodrigo Borgia, also known as Pope Alexander VI from Assassin's Creed 2.
Ooh, I remember this asshole.
Right, so this guy in Renaissance Italy, he is the Grand Master of the Templar Order and the one who orchestrated the events that led to the public execution of Ezio Auditore's father and 2 brothers. So already he's kind of an asshole. All of Ezio's machinations, all of Ezio's entire journey is to get revenge against Rodrigo for what he did, and this becomes increasingly difficult about a little more than halfway through the story when Rodrigo, through his ties in the Vatican, ascends to the head of the Catholic Church and becomes Pope Alexander VI. At this point, he's got not only the entire Templar Order under his fingertips, but he also commands the full might of the Catholic Church, which, for those unfamiliar with European history, basically was the law in Italy at the time. But what I like about this fight the most is throughout Ezio's adventure, you get all of these skills, all of these weapons and tools and tricks of the trade that an assassin could use. And when you finally descend into the first civilization site beneath Castel Sant'Angelo and you corner Rodrigo Borgia, You use absolutely none of that. You strip the swords, you remove the hidden blades, and the final boss fight boils down to a literal fist fight with the Pope, and I love it.
That's very funny to think of. Just in or out of context, that's really funny. But that dude had it coming for so long, and it's a very satisfying conclusion.
It is, and obviously spoilers. You don't, because a fist fight is largely non-lethal. You don't kill him in this instance. He does manage to slip away, but he does get his comeuppance in Brotherhood, the following game.
Still, the visceral beatdown you give him is still pretty satisfying, and the fact that you're beating up the Pope is really funny.
And that's mostly what secures it. Like, obviously, the lead up is good, the atmosphere is good. The fact that he's just a reprehensible human being who just happens to now sit atop the Catholic Church is great. But the fact that the final boss of the game is a bare knuckles boxing match with the Pope just tickles me in ways that no other boss fight has before or since.
I want to add one thing to a point of yours, is the game ends how it starts. The first fight you do is a bare-knuckle brawl. It ends with it, it starts with it.
It is, yeah, because you fight Vieri de Pazzi and his gang in the streets of Florence. Same thing, bare-knuckles brawl, and yeah, you're right, that's exactly how it ends as well, so good observation.
I just now realized that, and I think that's actually a good point to it, Freddy. It starts how it ends.
Yeah, I actually hadn't pieced that together. That's a nice way to really tie things full circle.
The other two have any comments on this one?
No.
Didn't he also have like the pieces of Eden, and that's why you had to go into a fist fight?
So in that one, the papal staff is a piece of Eden in the Assassin's Creed universe, but Ezio also had an apple of Eden at the time, which made him immune to the staff's control. So with their seemingly most powerful weapons useless, Rodrigo basically tells him, like, take off the weapons, let's settle this like men, and Ezio figures, yeah, okay, why not? What I love is in the beginning of Brotherhood, when you tell all of your friends, oh yeah, I fought him, but I didn't kill him, they're all like, excuse me, what?
Not the smartest move, I'll say, but...
Machiavelli gives him an earful, but then Machiavelli was kind of an asshole too, so...
Well, I haven't played those games.
Well, it is Machiavelli.
I think that's a very good pick. That's the first one that's like kind of funny too, just because like the fight itself is kind of goofy when you think about it. You're fighting the Pope.
And it's not a hard fight, but just the novelty of boxing with the Pope. It just tickles me.
I think that was a good. I think that was a good idea. That was a good round 3. I think that was solid. That being said, MJ, no, it's Deluxe turn this time. I'm not gonna mess it up again.
Yeah, you're gonna try to do this to me again?
Listen,
Are you?
It's the first
Well,
one.
my choice is.
It's the first one I'm allowed to make mistakes. All right, so Deluxe, what's your round 3
We'll
pick?
iron this out by the end, hopefully.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine. But let's see your round 3, Deluxe. I'm very curious of where this goes after that.
Choices. I could go so many directions, but how about we do it with a clown that also has plans for essentially world domination, or I guess dimensional world domination. This is Dementio.
Oh, from Super Paper Mario.
He's been an antagonist throughout the entire game, but you never really notice how much of an antagonist he is. Throughout most of the game, he's just an underling of the big bad Count Black. That's what his name was. And he just wants the whole world to end because he's just been robbed of all his happiness throughout his life. He just wants it to end and just return to despair, to nothing. And throughout the entire story, you are told about these 2 books that essentially are 2 prophecies of how the worlds are gonna go. You only ever have the light, and he has the dark. While Dementio over here has read both of them and knows how everything goes down, and essentially jury-rigs everything to go his way. All behind the scenes, all to his favor. He can wipe you out with a snap of his finger. He does so, by the way, but only to his pleasure, to his advantage, to his plan. Everything from sending you to the depths of, well, what is essentially hell, to undermining his boss's machinations. Everything is to his favor. To the point where you get to the end, you beat Black, but it's not over. He jury-rigs everything into plan, and now he's the final boss. And you just cannot do anything to him. It is just like, how do we get here? How did this guy do everything and nobody could pick up on it? Never trust clowns, man. Never trust them. We learned that earlier from the previous entry. Just don't trust them.
Dementio is I think his design is one of the better ones of this list too. Like, this guy just screams evil clown and he doesn't use like the bright reds or anything. He's got kind of
he's purple and yellow with a black and white kind of like theater mask kind of going on.
Yeah, his design's a lot quieter, but his actions are not. He's constantly messing with everyone in the game.
You think he's just like, oh, he's just an ordinary minion like the other two you fought already, and then he just shows up out of nowhere and just nukes you. It's like, okay.
Yeah, he straight up kills you. And
again, it's like, it's not without purpose. There's a point to him doing it. It's to help you progress so Bleck can be beaten and he can get on with his plans. And because you have to use your like MacGuffins to deal with Bleck, he's essentially free to do it unchallenged.
It sounds kind of like this guy is what Black Zetsu should have been.
Yeah, kind of actually.
He's read both prophecies, knows how it all works, and knows how to rig everything so nothing can beat him by the end of it.
Of course you do, but you know that you're the hero.
Well, the only thing he miscalculated was Bleck and actually finding happiness at the end and actually being able to counteract them that way.
But
literally, you got saved by just fate, just saying screw him.
Well, that, and you had mentioned that he wants a what is it? You said he wants a return to despair. Is kind of
no. That's what Bleck wanted because he was the main antagonist for a while. He then just says he's basically plotting to remake everything how he sees fit. That's what he wants.
Ah, I see.
But he has Bleck to create the heart in the first place to actually like start all the events of the game, and then he helps you subtly along the way so you can beat him. And then with both powers out of the way, he's free to just take everything for himself and rule.
He's very intelligent.
Practically everything throughout the entire game, even rigging just like one of the heroes supposedly deciding everything to his whim.
Yeah, he's very intelligent, and he may not seem that way initially. He may seem just like a silly dude who's just teleporting
he
people
seems like
places.
just like a normal like Saturday cartoon villain of the week, and you just never understand until it's too late how devious this guy is.
That seems like that old time-tested warning of like always look out for the ones who are like the jokesters, the ones who are always first to laugh, because they're generally the ones who got the most fucked up stuff going on in their heads.
Yeah. Super Paper Mario, very slept on. If you haven't played it, give it a chance.
I keep Deadlock continues to sing its praises. I really need to get around to it.
It's not like a typical RPG, but it's a good game. The
It's
story is
basically
really
if
good.
you had the normal Mario formula with like RPG things behind the hood.
Definitely one of the more adult-oriented stories. Not the most, but for a Mario game, definitely. Well, MJ's been quiet. He hasn't said much until it's his turn, and it's that time once again. So MJ, let's see us with number 3.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, I didn't have too much to say on that one because I have not played those games. But my next one is going to be, I'm going to save my favorite one for last. But my next one is technically 3 bosses in one fight. It's from Ace Combat 5, The Unsung War. It is specifically Grabak Squadron, Ofnir Squadron, and the Solg. So the whole story about this one is at this point you have been going through a war between 2 major countries, Osea and Yuktobania, which is basically America and Russia, but not.
Respect.
Only to find out that it's actually being, manipulated behind the scenes by the country known as Belka, which has been known for, nuking itself 7 times in order to keep Allied forces from invading it at the end of the last war.
Strategy I would not have thought of.
Yeah.
Yep, they nuked all of the border cities to prevent any access.
I suppose that's one way to do it.
And so they've been manipulating this fight behind the scenes because they want to see all the other nations burn. And your squadron unfortunately gets caught up in this, and or rather your flight of fighters gets caught up in this, and you're forced out of the Osean military because it turns out, you guys actually get caught, you guys catch on to some of the things, and you are killed for all intents and purposes in an engagement. You then come back as the Ghosts of Rosgrees, trying to solve this issue and save, well, the world from going over into, full-blown nuclear warfare. And towards the end, you find out about the Solg, which is this orbital station to which the Belkans are going to be used to fire strategic. It's a strategic orbital linear gun, and they're going to be firing V2 cluster nuclear missiles at the countries of Osea and Yuktopania, and basically force everyone under themselves. But in the last mission, you managed to destroy the control center for it on the ground through an amazing tunnel chase, through an amazing tunnel trench run scene. And then starts with the next mission of it being just barely morning, with your flight taking off in order to engage these two Belkan squadrons who had previously put themselves inside of both Osean and Yuktopanian forces, militaries, to help cover some of their problems. But you also must now destroy the falling satellite with one last V2 in it before it hits the Sea of Ored and blows it up. And you're all doing this in a normal fighter plane, by the way.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what to really say about this. I feel like if I were to see it visually, it would definitely be more interesting. It's hard for me to say, though, because I don't really know the gameplay too well, aside from flying, fighter jets.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
I think the best part about it is, this is the last fight, and after the battle's over, and, you save, the city from the nuclear device by blowing up the satellite before it can get too low, you and your squadron just vanish. As in, you leave the entire military behind, no one ever finds you, and you're just the Ghosts of Rosgrees, that's that one squadron who was supposedly died, but then came back. And it's a great scene because during all of this, the Yuktobanian and Osean forces have come together to stop Belka. You have this amazing scene in the mission before where as you're flying towards it, you're getting IFF signals of enemy fighters popping up in front of you, only to find out that those are pilots from both sides joining together to stop these people from committing this atrocity.
It sounds
and they're all
interesting.
It's one of those things that you definitely have to have played it or seen it, I feel like, but it's the music that goes along with it, specifically the piano tune 15 years ago, which Zach will put in here. It's, I don't know, it just comes together for a fight that I can still remember today that I haven't beaten as a kid.
This may be a sleeper hit for the list. Hard for me to say, but it does sound like, especially mostly with the surrounding context, that it is very interesting.
There's a lot to be said about a country that will willingly nuke its own cities to prevent invasion.
Yeah, that was a big well, that's that's a technique.
And and then they decide, what, instead of fighting these countries, we're just gonna force them to fight each other by abducting both of their political leaders to the point, and basically starting to point fingers at each other.
I agree. It's a brilliant strategy.
Well, we could talk war plans another day. Maybe we'll make a draft list based off war tactics.
Yes.
That would be something. Well, let's see, MJ. Follow that up with your fourth pick for round 4.
So my fourth pick is the dragon from Dragon's Dogma.
Okay.
So I don't know if anyone here has played Dragon's Dogma, but it
I
basically
know the premise enough.
The game basically starts off with you, the protagonist, waking up in your sleepy fishing village, only for a dragon to literally fall out of the sky and start killing people. You, being the protagonist, attempt to stop it, and heroically you slay the dragon then and there. No, you get smacked and it rips your heart out. But instead of dying, you're now considered what is called the Arisen, and your goal is now to kill the dragon. And while this is, your fairly standard fantasy thing, what makes it interesting is the dragon is the previous Arisen. And the way that this works is, as you defeat the dragon in the final moments of it, you have to defeat. You're basically taken into this white plane where you and your main pawn, which is this extra-dimensional creature that only obeys Arisen, have to defeat the Arisen and pawn of the last person who beat the dragon online. And you can give up. You can decide just not to do this. And if you do, you become the dragon, because as the Arisen, you must finish your goal. If you don't, then you are cursed to forever be the dragon. Until the next Arisen comes and defeats it. So it's this whole cyclical cycle that started. The fight is... And the other thing that's really nice about it is that he actually abducts, like, your beloved, which can be kind of funny because, it's based off of specific dialogues with characters. And it's something that generally happens in the background unless you're paying attention. So you sometimes just... You could get, Kina, who's like your village friend who you kind of have a crush on. Or you could get Madeline, who the best description of her is money-grubbing merchant. It just all depends on, your actions and stuff. And you're having to fight the dragon, by climbing over it, stabbing it in the heart, doing what you can, firing ballistas from towers. And eventually you get stuck on top of it while it's flying, and you have to climb over it and stab it in the heart to finally be able to actually finish the final battle. And once you defeat it, you go into this whole sequence of having to kill the last Arisen or become the dragon if you fail. And while there's technically is other bosses that you can fight after this, those are post-game enemies, and I don't count those ones.
Right.
So they are pretty cool. This game is, the best way to describe it is like, imagine if you were playing Shadow of the Colossus, but, one of the beasts just starts shit-talking you.
I do appreciate the concept of, like, becoming the thing you're trying to destroy if you fail.
And it's really interesting since back at least on the 360 and when you're playing online, the Arisen that you have to defeat is the last, like, actual player person who defeated the dragon.
Oh, that's a nice touch.
Yeah, this one, I've known about Dragon Dogma because it was very popular back in the day, but I didn't know, like, I don't really know anything outside of it, or well, I guess inside of it. So that's very interesting. I'm kind of curious. I kind of want to play the game now to see.
It's also nice, like that whole, like you mentioned how it goes in a cycle. Like the next Arisen, like it's their destiny to either destroy the dragon or become the dragon. I find it almost adds like an extra layer of tragedy on that sort of thing when it's a fated encounter that no matter what you do, you can't avoid or divert in any meaningful way.
Definitely unique when it comes to our list. Closest thing to that is the Gwen boss fight, where you either start or continue the Age of Fire. Stop it. So, but that I think takes it in a very different direction. Not a bad choice, I think. Definitely one I'm like, I'm very curious about this one now. Deadlock, any opinions?
No, I got nothing to add to that. Like that, it's pretty much like a very unique way that just take things out, anyways.
And on top of that, if you're beloved that the dragon stole, you can choose to sacrifice them to the dragon, which ends in a bad ending where you become the ruler of the nearby kingdom, but you're stuck there forever because the Arisen are immortal.
Oh god, a curse upon a curse.
Because you no longer have your heart. It is literally been eaten by the dragon.
Well, that sucks.
That's metal as hell.
Yeah, it literally taps your chest, blood splurts out everywhere as it just holds your heart on its finger before eating it, and then you have to... and the whole journey really is to claim it back.
And yet
give up and be a wimp.
And yet somehow that's a far simpler way of creating nobodies than the way I'm familiar with.
Not wrong. Well,
maybe they should just rip their hearts out,
I think that was a good round 4 pick in the fact that one's very unique to the list so far. That being said, Deluxe may top that. Let's see what he does.
Choices.
You already did this bit.
You've got two choices left.
Well,
I
if
mean,
you don't got a choice, I'll do my round 5.
Yeah, you've got 2 choices left. Flip a fucking coin. Let's go.
No, I've had a whole backlog just in case you guys sniped something.
Well, yeah, that's what I said, but you did this bit already. Go.
I know. I'm not doing it as a bit. I'm literally just thinking real quick. It's like, oh god, which one do I go with now?
His inner monologue, the outer one.
Yes.
He was. They're like, I can cut the video down a little bit here and there. It's fine. You don't have to. I'm leaving this in though, because it's funny.
Yeah, I understand that. Fair enough. Ha ha. Alrighty, fine. Let's just go with this one. Metroid. It's definitely been a long ride with this one, and even to the one I'm talking about in general, because even despite how much you hear about them throughout the game, you don't really ever see a Chozo, which is essentially the bird people that help you out to actually become the bounty hunter you essentially are in every single game. You don't really see one. Until we get to Metroid Dread and it just curb stomps you right out of the gate.
Oh.
So that alone sets the tone for like why everything is happening here, and also why you have been, well, Metroided this time around. So throughout the entire game, you were just, again, going around collecting your powers back, but this entire time you were sent here looking for the X parasites, because, well, if you ever seen The Thing, you know exactly what these things are essentially about.
Mm-hmm.
They are
So
terrifying.
you being the only thing that can actually deal with them, go there, and now you're just back to square one. And yet you never see any of these things for like half the game. You're just wondering the entire time, where are these things? Why did I just get attacked by essentially what is my people? And you just constantly just like scouting your way. And this is also the time where you also come across some new enemies, which is these research like drones that are essentially supposed to capture specimens, and that's how you learn about the X-Presidents. By the time you actually meet them, they're out for you now. Something's taken over them, and if they even so much as get a hold of you, you're basically dead. No ifs, ands, or buts. So, something took over these things, the X are MIA, and all the while the Chozo just is no longer around. And as you start beating these things up, find the X, and now have just taken over the planet now by this, you finally get to the last space station to hopefully just nuke this X parasite infestation out again. You just get to the throne, to like the last room, and you're met with him also. This is Ravenbeak, and is arguably one of the hardest bosses in any Metroid game. He's fast, he's swift, he actually has freaking wings to actually fly around and outmaneuver you. He has some of the most powerful weapons any hunter has ever had, and it's all aimed at you. And that's before you realizing, oh, this is the reason I have Metroid DNA in the first place. This guy gave it to us. He has his own arm cannon, which is how we know it also. He's essentially a surrogate father who's using you for nothing more than a weapon of war. And the entire time you're just trying to beat him down and just try to survive his entire onslaught. And even as you get the upper hand on him and actually just clip his wings, which by the way, he ends up having only one wing, which he rips off and just doesn't care about, because holy shit, this guy is a madman. And you, even as you get to the end, you just like, no. He just grabs a hold of you, suffocates you, and just says, I have enough of you. I can make more of you. You just rest and sleep. You're done. And you just basically throw a fit out of anger, awaken to the whole latent Metroid stuff that you've had in you from Fusion. And now you're just going on a tirade with explosive power, just siphoning everything, including the station you're fighting on, crashing it into the ground. And you think it's over with. No! This guy is still alive, barely breathing, only to just get possessed by more X, and just becomes a monstrosity. And even when all that, he goes down to one shot. It is just one huge adrenaline rush and panic frenzy, just getting to him, beating him, and just trying to get away. It's just madness.
Between Ravenbeak and Adam from Other M, I'm thinking Samus needs to pick better surrogate father figures.
I do absolutely love that Ravenbeak and the whole situation in Dread is actually shown that this was going to happen back in Samus Returns.
Metroid has really good lore if you give it the time.
Yeah.
And this guy is easily one of the hardest fights in any Metroid game. Hands down, no question about it. He is cutthroat, he is calm, cold, and calculated.
Out of all the boss fights, this one's probably the most monstrous so far, honestly.
I mean, I wouldn't even say he is monstrous throughout most of the fight where you actually do the fighting. He's just a Chozo. If you've seen the statues, he's essentially that stature, but he has the cunning, brutality, and just armaments to actually deal with everything you have. He has your Shine Spark. He has flight. He has several different firing blasters to actually hit you with. He can literally throw a sun into the sky to have it rain down radiation waves to smite you with. He has so many armaments, and you just have to dodge, beat, or counter them all just to survive.
Jesus.
Now, the wings you mentioned, are they his, naturally?
It's not really explained. It could be, it might not be, but...
Because either way,
you shoot one off, and when he's just grounded again, he grips it, and there's this sickening crunch as it rips off. So it's heavily implied they are his actual wings.
Well, the reason I ask is because we've if you dabbled in Metroid even a little bit, you're familiar with who Ridley is.
Oh no, these are like black avian wings.
No, I get that, but the reality is with Ridley being rebuilt as Meta Ridley, Ravenbeak probably figures that even if he ditches the wings, even if he rips the one remaining one off, he could have them rebuilt, possibly better to suit whatever goals he has.
It's bad for him.
And he's just been
doesn't count for him.
Yeah, he only wanted you for a warrior. And then you just become an even bit better, more powerful one when he realizes all the Metroids are gone except you. So once you actually make it to the end, he's like, he has what he needs. He has the perfect warrior to have an army to rule everything. And you just say no to that. You're not a thrall. You're not a pawn. You are a protector. And he does not take that kindly.
They almost never do.
It's a good thing Samus is a good person. Well, I think that was a very interesting boss fight. Definitely the one with the most in-depth gameplay explanation. A lot of going on over there.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
the amount of just shit he throws at you, holy hell! It is just a gauntlet to survive.
Well, Chris, do you think you can top that one?
I think I can. Because I can hit one that's probably resounded with all four of us. Part of what makes a final boss so rewarding is not only the build-up and the, perceived difficulty of the boss encounter itself, but also the sense of satisfaction, whether it be out of some form of benevolence or whether it just be out of petty smugness that you get from completing the fight. And I believe this next pick can be encapsulated with a quote that we have all known and dreaded since the first time we heard it in game. Smell you later.
Saw this coming a mile away.
Yep, yeah. This would be your rival, also known as Blue from Pokemon Red and Blue. This guy is a prick from the first time you see him in Professor Oak's lab. He intentionally takes his pick for starter Pokemon after you, just so he can pick a type superior Pokemon. He accosts you with your first battle before you even leave the lab, so a handful of unfortunate Nuzlocke players have probably had their runs ended by this guy. Every single time you deal with him in the game, he's always showing up from a point on the map ahead of where you are, implying that he's always one step ahead of you. He's callous, he's disrespectful, he's a fucking brat, and then when you finally grind all the way up, you get through Victory Road, you beat the Elite Four, you find out that this jackass beat the league before you and now sits atop its pinnacle as the Pokemon League champion. And this disappointment is short-lived as you have your climactic final showdown with him. And when you finally beat him, it's almost like every insult, every thinly veiled suggestion that he's better than you and you'll never measure up, always going to be less than, just melts away. especially when you find out, like, Professor Oak shows up shortly afterwards, and you find out that this guy's reign was so short-lived that his own grandfather couldn't come, what is it, like 2 cities over to congratulate him? So just that level of curb stomp that you give, just defeating and humiliating this man after his reign was probably only a couple of hours, let's be real.
At most.
Could have been even shorter.
But just the catharsis of being the one to administer comeuppance to this guy who has been such a bastard from day one, I find to be very satisfying, particularly as a kid where I might be giving myself too much credit by saying I was far more petty then than I am now, but it was nonetheless enjoyable.
I was wondering if someone was going to pick a Pokemon, well, because there's a few good options there.
There are, but I decided the OG would probably resonate most soundly with this group.
I think it was a pretty solid pick, honestly, because goddamn Blue needed a good head smack.
He needed an attitude adjustment, a tune-up, if you will.
There were 3 picks I could have foreseen for Pokemon, 2 of which are trainers, and this was the absolutely one I would expect. For good reason.
I did contemplate picking a Pokemon one. I don't think I'm going to take one myself, but anything you got to say over there, MJ?
Yeah, no, I absolutely, love Blue, and, as he's also shown in, which luckily we're taking him by, his video game performance, not the fucking manga one where he's, like, bloodthirsty.
Well, yeah.
He's also kind of mellowed out by the time you see him in future installments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was nice. I mean, it means he learned. He's still a bit of a prick, but not in a bad way. He's like, haha, I'm a very good trainer. You might have a tough time with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but he didn't. It wasn't like he was when he was a kid, where he thought like, no, he was the man, like he was the guy.
To be fair, he did beat Elite Four, so he is technically the guy.
Oh yeah, his claims were not without some degree of merit. It's just nice being the guy that he always compared to unfavorably to him, now being the one to just destroy him and take his place at the top of it all.
Which shouldn't have been surprising to him, considering every other encounter you've also beat him, despite him being ahead of you.
And me personally, we're kind of delving into a different game, but I appreciated the kind of twisting the knife after it was in, where Red just straight up abdicates the championship and just leaves.
Yeah, I'd be kind of mad if I were Blue.
Yeah, just whoops Blue's ass and decides, nah, champion's not for me. Smell you later, loser.
He really hit him with it.
That is what we call salt in the wound.
I think that was a very good pick. I'm surprised, thinking about that, none of us picked a Pokemon thing sooner.
I figured maybe a couple of mine might get sniped, so I kind of came up with 10 instead of 5.
I mean, I came up with plenty myself, which is why I said I have a lot to choose from myself.
I picked a couple, but I had a feeling...
5 because
you knew no one was going to pick it.
Yeah, I knew no one played, none of you guys played these games.
Yeah, Blue was one of my bench hitters. I didn't expect anybody to forego Pokemon all the way up until round 4, so I pulled them out just for...
Pokemon boss fights are good, but there are just better ones, for the most part.
I agree. Like I said, this one was more the personal experience of it, the catharsis of beating somebody who always said he was better than you.
I agree.
After you murdered a Pokemon?
Listen. Detail's not important.
Well, it's the beginning of the end, fellas. It's my round 4, which will lead into my round 5. Not there quite yet. This one's kind of a bit of a somber pick. And I'm going to go a little bit out there. I'm actually going to go with Mary from Silent Hill 2. Now, if you've played Silent Hill 2, it's... I don't think it's the scariest game, but that's not really relevant. There's a character that follows you who looks exactly like your dead wife. So, and that kind of leads into the final boss. Huh?
Pyramid Head?
No, Pyramid Head's there, but the whole thing with Silent Hill is everything's representative. Pyramid Head's not the final boss. He's barely an antagonist, actually.
I know, I was being a shit.
Yeah, but the whole thing of Silent Hill is it's the area is trying to teach you a lesson. It's whether you accept it or you don't accept the lesson, you don't learn the lesson, is whether you get out of Silent Hill or not. And the whole game is leading up to a bunch of things of the main character, James, learning... James is a bit of a son of a bitch, so to give a brief plot synopsis because it is important for the final boss. James and his wife his wife got sick after a thing, and they started drowning in medical bills. She was getting worse. They weren't having relations, so James started becoming very annoyed. He became irate. She was, of course, upset with him because he wasn't understanding. He wasn't there for her, and it's not said directly. And James is kind of a liar throughout the game to the player. James thinks his wife has been dead for like 2 years. In truth, he killed his wife the previous day. James goes into a type of psychosis, and that's what Silent Hill is trying to teach him. Like, you need to accept what you've done and become be a better person for it. So you're going through the whole game. He's still, he doesn't know exactly what happened to his wife because he's in that psychotic state for a while. And throughout the game, you have the person that looks like his dead wife following her, who's very seductive and beautiful. But she's also still vulnerable and stuff. So you're constantly with her, or you lose her every now and then, because for one reason or another. Come to the end game where James has finally made that realization. He killed his wife. He accepts that what he did was wrong. He needs to, and him and her spirit they apologize to each other. I can't remember exactly how that goes, but they kind of do like make amends spiritually. But for James to fully accept it, he has to go and talk to the fake Mary, and which culminates to a fight. The fight itself is not very great, but if you look at Mary, her design is very strong because she is immobile. She herself cannot move except for her head, who is kind of vibrating a bit violently. She's in a cage and like strapped to a medical bed. So visually speaking, it represents Mary's condition at that point, where she was so bedridden and barely living. That's kind of how James in his mind saw her, and Silent Hill gave that physical form. After you beat that, depending on which he accepts what he's done. He goes one of several routes. One of which I think the best ending personally, where he takes this little girl who is friends with Mary and he adopts her because the little girl had nowhere to go because Mary said that she would adopt her because Mary helped out with some of the orphans that would come to the hospital. So the ending was a little rough, but I think the context around the fight itself is very, very well done.
Hey, see, I don't think that's the best ending in that game. The dog ending is better.
Shut up. So any actual commentary on that, or are you actually just gonna...
No, I think it's a good choice. I definitely think that it's one of the more interesting choices I do.
I like the psychological aspect, and that's one of those things like Silent Hill 2, I think we can pretty much unanimously agree, is one of the better horror games to come out in the horror genre. And stuff like that is really kind of why. It's because this was before the age of jump scares. This is when a game will actually get up in your head and screw with your perception of what you think reality is.
Yeah, that I fell in love with Silent Hill 2.
Silent Hill 2, I will I haven't played it in a while, but when I did back when I was a teenager, I remember thinking wow, this was really friggin' good.
It's not the scariest, so if you're not good with being scared, it is a good one for you to play.
Yes, it's more psychological than it is stereotypical horror.
All right, so for my round 5, my final pick that will solidify my list as the number 1, I'm gonna go with Zanza from Xenoblade Chronicles.
Interesting choice.
Yes, quite. So, he's got one of the best boss themes I've ever heard. It's just so solid. Just going straight into that. And he is, in short, a god. He is just a god. And it kind of almost comes out of nowhere, but not quite. Zanza is there, and basically everything that happens in the game of Xenoblade is because of him. He kind of manipulates everything to go his favor. So kind of similar to Dementio that I mentioned previously. But in a way that's he's getting what he wants one way or another, and he does get what he wants in the end, but he still ends up losing. Zanza, he had he poured his essence to several creatures. He was locked in a giant at one point, and then upon Shulk meeting that giant is when he kind of like started transferring his essence into Shulk, because he made sure Shulk was conceived and in his image. Like he manipulated events to go his way and eventually regain power. At some point, he basically takes Shulk's life to gain his own form. So he kills the main character at one point. And now that he gets the two like main weapons, he gets 2 Monados until Shulk gets his own. At some point, he gets the Monado, and there's one for the Mechon, I forget what it was called. And he fight him, with both those, so he's a god with 2 godly weapons, and you were just trying to get vengeance for everyone, because he set up the war between the humans and they're called Homs, but between the organic life and the mechanical life. He manipulated the two gods they were living on, the dead gods they were living on. He created them to fight, and they created life, and everything all the life energy they created was his life energy. He's trying to reclaim it by killing everyone, and basically become the one true being again. It's a tough fight. It is hard if you do not do the grinding, if you don't do side quests and stuff. It is extremely difficult, and if you don't get your affinity levels between your party up, it is hard. And he doesn't make it easy for you by any stroke of the imaginations. But it's nice because the whole party is affected by him. So no matter who you bring, you feel like you're doing justice to them for one reason or another. Like he killed Chrom. He manipulated your best friends who worked for him. He got everyone you loved killed. He destroyed your colony. He destroyed your home. He's actively ruining everything for everyone. For himself. And he doesn't even really give a totally clear reason, honestly. But it's just so strong. And like I said, the boss fight music is one of the best. This is definitely my weakest entry for me describing it, but I just couldn't not do it.
I like the concept of a boss who affects the entire, not just you, but the NPCs as well.
Yeah, literally
the main antagonists who were up until that point.
Yep, everything was because of him, and he wanted things to do it his way. He's and in his mind, it's not evil because it's he's reclaiming what's his. He's getting the life energy he gave back. So, but that'll be my final pick. My other pick was the first hero from Skull the Hero Slayer.
MJ, your thoughts?
I haven't played the game, but it's definitely one thing I love and actually quite like is the idea of you're made in my image, I'm going to use you. Nuh-uh.
Yeah, it's basically you gave us life, but you don't control us.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, Chris, would you like to see the final results of your list and show us as well?
Wait, I only submitted 4, didn't I?
That's what I'm saying. Give us the 5th one. I said it weird.
Yeah, you did.
I know.
So then my final pick, a bit of an obscure one, and this will be one that, Zach, you deal with later down your list of playthroughs. But for me, nothing says intimidating boss like one that straight up flexes on something that you thought was the boss. And that is exactly what the Giganotosaurus from Dino Crisis 2 does. Through the majority of the game, so your gameplay experience is split between Regina, the Special Forces operative from the first Dino Crisis, and Dylan Morton, who is kind of the new face that you get in Dino Crisis 2. And their attempts to obviously solve the main crisis of the game are constantly being stifled and kind of endangered by a Tyrannosaurus that is pursuing them constantly. It's an ever-present threat throughout the game that none of your weapons can really do anything against. And towards the game's climax, you find, assuming you're good at digging around and finding hidden items, you find a file that discusses a rumor of a dinosaur that is even bigger and more vicious than the T-Rex. And immediately after you leave that room, after securing the object of your mission in this area, you're accosted by the T-Rex again, and right when you think it's about to bear down on you, the Giganotosaurus shows up, and this thing comes in like the fucking Kool-Aid Man. Like, it literally bursts through a wall, and it's almost like 1.5 times bigger than the T-Rex, this thing that the game has already taught you to fear. And obviously the two begin a rather one-sided fight, forcing your character to retreat back into the room they just came from. And it shows you what's going on outside as the T-Rex tries and fails to fight this thing, and the Gigi just slams its head on top of the Rex, grabs it by the torso, and flings it across this wide open space they're in before just bearing down on it and finishing it off for good. So already, this thing shows itself to be stronger than the thing that you already couldn't kill. And then you have to deal with this thing not once, but twice in the game's final act. The first time as Regina, you have to deal with it by using your stun gun in combination with some gas lines that you manipulate to make some high-power flamethrowers. But the second time, in the very final scene of the game where it presents itself as the final boss, it shows up with a different model, actually. So its scale texture actually looks to be burnt and paled away, and its eyes are actually glassed over from the effects of the fire. But this thing, you have very little time and very little space to do anything about it, and this thing cares even less about your weapons than the T-Rex did. So your shotgun, your solid cannon, whack. Your anti-tank rifle, delicious. Your rocket launcher, no fucks to give. This thing is going to keep coming at you, and it's going to do so until you're dead. The only way that you end up finally being able to beat this guy, and what was, as a kid, to me, one of the coolest deaths for a final boss I think I've ever seen, is you have to connect the computer system in the room you're in to a satellite in orbit, which then shoots down a fuck-mothering laser from space to finally end this thing for good.
I think I've seen a little bit of gameplay footage of this boss fight off of someone else's video, so I know it is pretty intimidating looking from what I recall.
Oh, it's horrifying, especially after you've already built up the T-Rex in your mind to already be scary and a thing to be avoided. But the fact that I wouldn't call it a boss fight so much as a boss game of cat and mouse, because you can't do anything to it, and if you make one wrong move, it could very easily end your career.
It's definitely one of the better ones, and at least it has a better death than one of my favorite endings from Dino Crisis 1. The Dino Dodo ending, if you remember that one, Chris.
Oh, yeah.
With the T-Rex swimming at Mach 5.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus.
But yeah, I love the... Because for me, obviously, as a kid, I don't have, I had very little suspension of disbelief for what, space-age weapons could actually do. So watching you basically use the Hammer of Dawn to end this thing with just a giant Kamehameha from orbit was so fucking cool to me growing up.
Well, I think that's a pretty strong ender for your list. So, Deadlock, what is your round 5 pick?
I'm just gonna say it. Has there ever been a more pitiful villain than Cortex? This is the guy who has been trying to make an army for world domination, only for his general to be a failure. Said failure comes back to just pretty much destroy his entire fortress, and ever since it's just been a thorn in his side ever, and just keeps going on and on and on. To the point where you get into the third game, and he's just done with everything. Sure, he's told he has to keep things going, but he's just I just want it all to go over. I just want it to be done. And then it just keeps going. When you actually get to the Crash 4 game, where yes, he's back from beyond time. Yes, he's actually working with the antagonist Entropy to actually break through all sorts of dimensional barriers. But even by the time you get to him in, like, at the end of, like, the, what is it, 6th world, 5th? You finally get to him. He looks like he's having the time of his life, and then you beat him, and it's just like, why? Why can't anything just ever go right? Everything just goes wrong for him ever since that first game. So once you actually finally beat Entropy and actually get past the next world, he just realizes these masks are quite powerful. So he rips the one that's controlling time to literally just go back in time all the way to when the first game happened and just wants to prevent it from ever happening. And that's pretty much what sets the stage for what's happening here at this final confrontation. Everything just that happens in the game is now just going against you. He's ripped all 4 dimensional masks to just rip them and use them against you. He'll make the floors disappear right underneath you just by switching it to another reality. He'll slow down and speed things up just to actually make things even more difficult for you. All while platforms are vanishing, enemies you need to hit him are just trying to hit you while you have to hit them back to him. And just every single obstacle you've ever seen before is just coming back at you, and he just does not want to give you any leg room. Even when you finally get to the end, you realize that his failures just don't stop. Literally going back in time is literally what causes the crash of this at this point to actually mess something up back then and actually start all the failures from the very beginning. It just does not stop for this guy. Everything just keeps going bad and worse. And you just can't help but just want him to just catch a break after a while.
I love the concept of like time travel causing all the problems you hope to avoid. It's very 12 Monkeys in a way.
Like, he finally thinks he's found a way out, and it's just like, no, he just literally just caused everything to happen in the first place. Like, God, he just wants a break from it all.
Yet no break ever comes.
Nope, never does. Even when you finally get the ending, like the last secret ending, and you just like, finally, I can just relax on this beach. Big bad boss is back. We're gonna have to do more shit again, aren't we? Fuck. Like, you think he finally gets a break, and he just doesn't. It never stops. This is like one of the only antagonists. Like, yeah, he's pure evil, but you just can't help but pity the man.
At a certain, because how heinous are his actions? Like, does he do anything particularly bad to bottom out your pity well?
Well, starting from like the first game, he's essentially wanting to mutate a whole bunch of animals to make an army to rule the world, which, again, the main character Crash is just the one that failed.
Getting some serious Robotnik vibes off of that.
Yeah, then the second game comes along and he just recruits you to actually collecting enough resources to essentially mind control the whole world. You stop that also. It's like nothing gets his break. Then they apparently try going through time to get all those relics back to actually get something done. No, you stop that again too. It's like every plan he ever gets into just crumbles at the seams.
Yeah, he's
Having
cartoon. He's cartoon evil.
I was gonna say,
yeah,
having never played this game before, I'm getting some serious Doofenshmirtz vibes off of this guy.
Yeah. Everything just like goes wrong, and even by the end of the third game, he's just like, I just want everything to go away. Just take me to a beach where I can get some bags of ice for my head. He just wants everything to just stop and just for him to relax and just no more do anything. But it just keeps going and going and going.
Some people might be upset that Cortex is this low and this late in our list, but I think it's appropriate.
Yeah, his last fight is actually quite tricky and difficult, but not overwhelmingly so. So many gimmicks just come back to the forefront from just like, not even just this game, but from other games as well. And yet he just still can't win. It's just like, I'm never gonna win. And you just can't help but feel sorry for him.
Well, I feel sorry for the viewers because we're down to our last entry.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. So, MJ, go.
Yep. So my last one is from Final Fantasy XIV, specifically the Shadowbringers expansion, the final main story boss of that one, the Warrior of Light himself.
To be honest, I'm a little surprised you didn't pick Sephiroth.
I was thinking about Sephiroth, but at the same time, I don't know. This one just hits harder because the whole fight is put forward from a very sympathetic angle.
Hmm.
The Warrior of Light, known as Elidibus, has been trying his absolute damnedest, along with several other characters that up to this point you have killed, called Ascians, to rebuild the world that they once knew. Because what happened, the God of Light literally separated their world into 13 and destroyed it. And they brought upon the dark powers of Zodiark, the God of Darkness, to try to fix this, try to bring their world and everything they had back together. And you are here to stop this. And it's put forward into this idea of, you have been the hero, the Warrior of Light, all the way up until this expansion, but in this one, you're doing the exact opposite of that. You're trying to reset the world back to a balance of light and dark, becoming the Shadow Bringer, as you bring night to this eternally light world that has almost completely fallen to the elemental of light. And so in this case, Elidibus has taken up the mantle of the Warrior of Light and is summoning warriors from all across time to try all across the different dimensions in order to bring these Warriors of Light in to stop you, because they need the world to become this world to fall, to more or less fall to light. What's more sad about this is midway through the fight, while it's using while the theme is playing, the song To the Edge is playing, which has an underlying theme of the Shadowbringer's main theme, along with another theme layered on top of it. And you're going through this entire fight, and he's doing everything he can to try and stop you. And eventually, he does manage to defeat you. He binds you and then sends you into the realm, the destroyed realm, which all the Ascians have gone to whenever you have defeated them prior. And it's just like, give up hope. Even if you break free of the bindings, you will be forever stuck there. Only for, in the end, one of the Ascians that you have defeated, who has entrusted you with the world, to rebuild the world, to come through and free you from this binding. Which is even worse for Elidibus, because it's one of his friends, but he's lost all memories of everyone before, because this conflict has been going on for so long. So he's a sympathetic boss, because they want to fix their world, but to fix their world they destroy all these other ones. These ones that were birthed from the destruction of theirs. And it really flips the game on its head, because you're the Warrior of Darkness now, trying to save this world, when you've been the Warrior of Light in your own world, because you've been summoned into this one to stop the light by any means possible. So it's a very sympathetic boss fight, where really Elidibus has the right in it, because they want to fix their world, but they're going about it in a way that will just bring destruction. But luckily, in the end, when you do finally defeat him, you're able to give him his memories back as he's being defeated, so he can at least have one final piece with those that he can remember.
That sounds like it almost, although to a slightly different degree, it kind of plays off of your fourth round pick too, with the dragon, of you were this thing and now you are the thing that stands in stark contrast to that thing. Can always appreciate that, like, hey, had the dice fallen differently, this could have been me.
Which, in the end, you're still the hero, because you're saving the realm, because he's trying to plunge it in, he's trying to finish it off, and which will cause a cascading chain of all the 13 worlds clash, basically falling together and bringing back Zodiark and the realm in which the Ascians knew, but everyone dies.
Good old rocks fall.
Like, the Heroes of Light were always in this world, they're the same one. You've already fought them before, and you've had to more or less see their world from what it was, but when they finished their quest and wiped out the darkness, a literal ocean of light came across to try to destroy it. That was their reward for winning. Because it's been a giant betting match between them. if the darkness claims more of the 13 worlds, or light claims more of the 13 worlds, then that's how it is.
Mm-hmm. I've noticed the whole contrast of light and dark being a kind of recurring theme in Ubisoft game or Square Enix games ever since. Maybe it's only I started to take note of it around the time Kingdom Hearts came out, but I've noticed ever since then it seems to be a pretty heavy theme across most of the main titles.
And I think the best part about this fight is that he's taken the form of the Hero of Light from one of the earliest Final Fantasy games.
The Hero of Light was a concept in the first one. Well, honestly, it's a concept in the first few.
But that actual design is like...
It might be based off the first game. The first game's hard.
Yeah.
That being said, so that is our last one in our draft here. How do you guys feel about your lists?
Pretty good.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with it. I mean, 5 is a nice number. Obviously, I had more that I would like to have put up, but I'm comfortable with 5. Yeah, but I'm sure we have a nice duration for video here.
I'm honestly surprised I didn't put a single Dark Souls boss on here.
So am I.
I think I think it's a bit too long, but we'll see what happens when I edit it down and cut out the junk that we don't need. How do you feel about each other's list? Whose list would you vote for if you couldn't vote for your own? Who would you vote for?
Probably Chris's.
I'd probably vote for yours, Zach.
I think I'd vote for Deadlock's.
And see, I would go for MJ's mostly because as someone who hasn't played any of the games he mentioned, I feel like I would be able to go into most of these blind and be able to experience them as they were intended.
How did we get a 4-way tie again?
It just comes down to what we each value individually in a boss fight. I think that's what, because honestly, if you look at these boss fights, they all have different values between them. Even among our lists, most of them don't share commonalities between each list. All right, so that is our list.
I was going to say, like, given what we picked, we might actually need to have a round 2 for final bosses.
We'll see. That'll be a subject for another day. That being said, let us know down in the comments whose list you thought was your favorite. Tell them why it's mine. I will, if you want, I'll put a comment for each person's list. Use the like button to vote, because unfortunately, I can't put a poll in the comments. If I could, I would. And we'll see you guys next time with whatever we're doing next time.
You probably put it in the description.